What do you want to be when you grow up? How often were you asked that question as a child? Do you find yourself asking that question of children every so often today? The word be, it conjures up the sense of permanency. It feels definitive. Can I only be one thing? Whereas thinking about our future should be where we have a sense of exploration, of imagination. If you answer, I don't know, to the question, you can almost feel the fear, the anxiety, something not right about me if I don't know the answer to this question, what do I want to be when I grow up? As opposed to the sense of liberation and energy, exploration that should come in answer to questions like, what do I want to know? What do I want to do when I grow up? I was forced to answer that question in a very real way by the system, by our education system, when I was 15 years old. And I was told that the subjects that I would pick for the next 2 years of school and my final examination would dictate how well I did in those exams, whether I went to college and what I studied, and what I would be for the rest of my life. A pretty daunting prospect at 15. I did my final exams, I went to college, and I entered the workplace. And I could not have named or imagined any one of the jobs that I went on to do when I was 15 years old. Most of them didn't even exist. My first full-time job in the workplace was in the Irish Parliament, in the Oireachtas, in the debate section, as part of the first team that did not record parliamentary debates and proceedings by shorthand. It was the introduction of technology, of typing and editing as we went. I then did a variety of advisor roles across Irish politics and Irish government, including being the first ever political advisor working in the Office of the Attorney General, which had heretofore been separate from the politics of government. I then found my way to Northern Ireland, where I was head of media and public relations for the police service of Northern Ireland. A young-ish, Catholic-ish girl, woman, from what we fondly call the rebel county, County Cork. Not the first name or the first person that you would have imagined in that role in 1986 when I was picking Leaving Cert subjects. In fact, in 2004, when I was in the role, there were people struggling with imagining or accepting that type of person in the role. I went on to do the same job for An Garda Síochána, and now I work at Twitter, a company that is just 10 years old, that is transforming the way in which the world stays connected to people and events around them, that relies on a level of connectivity, our internet, Wi-Fi, mobile devices, that we did not even contemplate 30 years ago when I was 15. So what did I want to be at that time? Well, I went through the usual list of known knowns, the words that you see in the Ladybird books and the school books, the professions that we'd all heard of. And I actually had settled on religion teacher. So I thought, who better to talk to than our parish priest, who was a family friend? And while he didn't quite say there's no future in that, he questioned the choice. And he suggested, because he had studied it himself, that I study law. So what was it that I learnt and experienced throughout my childhood, throughout my education, that actually prepared me for all the things that I've been doing throughout my career? And the list that comes to me is a combination of memories and experiences. I remember a house full of books. I remember being encouraged to read from an early age. taking volumes of World Book Encyclopedia off the shelves by letter and reading them, hungry for the information within. I remember Sunday drives with my father setting mental math and number puzzles for us, and me going, one more, I want a harder one, not content with just solving one and taking that. I remember asking my mother how to spell words and being utterly maddened when she'd say, look it up in the dictionary. And I'd go, well, if I knew how to look it up in the dictionary, that would mean I knew how to spell it and I wouldn't be asking. But now I understand. It's not about knowing the answer to the question or having the information. It's about knowing how to find it and work your mind through the process of figuring it out. I learned values, respect, integrity, empathy. Those were important in our house. The Taoiseach, who was from the political party who my parents did not vote for, came on the television news one night. And I said, oh, that fella's an idiot. And my mother immediately put her hand out and said, no, he's the Taoiseach. And regardless of whether you agree or disagree with his political views, you respect them and you respect his office. Another evening, we were all sent to our rooms to select a toy or book to give away. And we were taken down the road to a Vietnamese family who had moved into the neighborhood and were one of the 200 plus Vietnamese people who came here in 1979 to resettle. Empathy, respect. These skills and values were all taught in a house that at times my parents struggled to keep over our heads as they tried to educate 4 children to 3rd level through challenges like unemployment and illness. And going back to the school subjects, which ones did I choose, which put me on this path? So our old friend, the parish priest, I said, right, well, you've convinced me on the law. I suppose that means I should do accounting, business studies, and maybe history. Does that sound right? He shook his head. No. You should do higher level maths, physics, and chemistry. You need to develop your logic, your critical thinking, and your problem solving. He was a man ahead of his time. Because you look at today's children, and you look at the amount of information that's around them. The answers to most questions are quite literally at the tip of their fingers, the press of a button or the touch of a screen. So there is little value in teaching them facts and figures. What we need to do is to teach them and give them the skills to find information, to find the right information. And when they find that knowledge and that information, that they have the wherewithal to critically assess it, assess its veracity, assess its value, and we need to give them the resilience and the focus that's required to survive in that sea of data and knowledge. And we need to impress on them that learning and growing never stops. It's what Carl Dweck, the psychologist, calls the growth mindset. Growth mindset is that your talents and abilities can be constantly improved through hard work, good strategies, and the mentoring of others, as opposed to a fixed mindset, which is that your talents and abilities are fixed. You're born with a certain level of smartness. You have a certain level of ability, and that will never change. And her hypothesis is that successful people are those with growth mindsets who learn equally from their success and their mistakes, and they're ready for the next problem and the next challenge. So I like to think that that little girl in the back of the car looking for the next math puzzle was developing a growth mindset. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a purist on the growth mindset thing. I tend to have a pretty fixed mindset when it comes to questions like, can I sing? Definitely not. Am I sporty? No. And you could never convince me that the amount of a regime of training and practice would get me to a better place. So I'm not a paragon of virtue on the growth mindset. But I do know that every job I've had, every experience I've had, has been a path of learning, preparing me for the next job or the next life experience, whether as a sibling, a daughter, or a parent. Our CEO, Jack Dorsey, encourages us to do a mental exercise at the end of each day. Observe, learn, improve. What did I do today? What did I learn from that? How can I improve tomorrow? Because managing and leading in today's workplace is really, really challenging. Because at a time when organizations are becoming flatter, young people have huge expectations of what their potential could and should be, and who should be helping them to get there. And we need to encourage them to find that growth and development within themselves with our support, and also understand that progress isn't always about the next level or the next grade or the next title. Not everyone can be CEO, but everyone can be successful. And for me, I apply a couple of basic rules to my own approach to where I work, what I do, what I am being at any given time. And those are: always work for and with people from whom you are learning. Never work for somebody that you don't respect. And if you're not happy doing what you're doing, change it, because life is too short to spend 8 hours plus of every day unhappy. And so, I started with my 15-year-old self 30 years ago, and I look forward to my 75-year-old self, and I wonder what future is there for me. And it's at that moment that I pause, and I reflect on the fact that by the time they had reached their early 70s, my grandmother and now my mother were both in the grip of dementia. My mother, the woman who gave me that love of reading, of learning, of conversation, is now someone who cannot, in any meaningful way, connect with the world around her and with the people she loves. Following a recent visit, my little boy looked at me and, in his 7-year-old way of trying to understand and make sense of what was going on, said to me, "You know, Granny's not really smart anymore. And that's bad, because she taught me loads of things that you never did." There we had it again, even in the mind of a 7-year-old boy, the importance of learning, the importance of growing. And so I can look ahead 30 years and I can remain stagnant and fearful and worry about what it holds, or I can continue to see a future that's full of potential for exploration and opportunities to learn and to grow. I make my choice. I choose to grow. Thank you.